Oh boy. Oh boy, are we going to ruffle some chicken feathers today. So, let's talk about it. My favorite subject topic in the entire universe. Feminism. Now, in case you guys haven't realized yet, I am very much a masculine man. I prefer to be that way. I am that way. I'm naturally that way. And I believe all men should be the way I am. Not necessarily as a person, but I believe all men should be masculine. At least. That's the one thing that I believe all men should share is masculinity. That's it. Everything else, I don't care if you're different than me. I don't care what you think. I don't care how you feel. Every man, if you're a man, and I'm not talking about people that think they're men. I'm talking about real men that were born with penises. If you were born with that, you should be masculine. Period. I think the worst thing I've ever heard of in my life is a feminist male. I'm like, how the fuck can you even consider yourself a man and you're a feminist? Anyways, let's talk about it, right? Feminism. Started off, I believe I read in the 1850s. Supposed to be this noble movement to get women their rights and all of that, along with the whole civil rights movement, yada, yada, yada. You know the whole story, the whole bullshit, right? Trying to get people rights, this group right, that group's right, blacks' rights, free the slave, blah, blah, blah. We've heard the story. We've all gone to school. I'm not going to repeat all that bullshit. But what I want to talk about is what is transformed into today and how it's being used today to do something that I feel it was not intended for, and that is to destroy men and destroy societies and to pin men and women against each other. Now, before I say anything, I'm going to say that I am for women's rights. I am for rights for everyone. I don't believe in women's rights, men's rights, black rights, gay rights. I don't believe in all those rights. I believe in everyone should have rights. Right? That's how I feel. When you start to separate into groups and you start to fight for more rights than others, that's where the problems begin. That's where the problems start. That's where the separation and the chaos and the madness insinuates. And the governments are well aware of this because they're the ones that promote this shit and push it onto people. And they separate into, people into groups. They make them fight each other and go against each other. So you have feminists, you have LGBTQ, you have BLM, you have this, that, and the other. All these groups, right? All fighting for rights and blah, blah, blah. But when you look at it, at the end of the day, what all these groups are actually trying to do is destroy the groups that they're opposed to and get themselves special rights. That's what it's turned into. It went from everybody having equal rights to let's destroy the group that we don't like while promoting ourselves and pretending that we're better than them and then saying we're missing these rights. Can you give us these rights? Now, in the United States, and this is, I can only speak for my country, right? Can't speak for other countries, although I'll get into that as the video goes forward. But in the United States, for the most part, from what I see, everyone does have equal rights. I don't see where anybody's missing any rights. Now, you can argue that the government is encroaching on the rights of the citizens. So if you want to say the government versus the citizens, then I'll give you, there's a case to be made, right? You can say, yeah, the government is encroaching upon our rights. What do I mean? Well, they've used social media platforms. The federal government has colluded, and this is from Elon Musk in the Twitter files, with social media platforms to take away rights from the American citizens. So if you want to make that argument, I'm with you on that. We can talk about that. But when you start talking about different groups, that's where you lose me. Okay? So if you're going to start saying this group is missing this group, I don't want to hear that shit. All right? I don't give a fuck what group you belong to or what you think you're missing. If you're not talking about what I just said, there's nothing to talk about. Period. So now, as far as feminism is concerned, what the feminist movement has turned into in these last, I want to say 20 years or so, maybe less, is an ideology in the United States that exists solely for promoting women and putting them on pedestals while at the same time simultaneously destroying masculinity in men. It's not just about making women equal to men, because women already have equal rights to men. It's not about that. It's about elevating women past men, putting men down, making men look weak and effeminate, and emasculating them, and making women look like they're the new men, and they don't need man. They don't need any man, right? And a strong, independent woman don't need no man, right? That's. I hear people saying that all the time, but that's what it's turned into. And then you have this fucking Barbie movie that was created to, and I haven't watched it, but I've heard a lot about it. It's created to basically indoctrinate young girls into believing the same thing, the same ideology of women are superior to men. That's it. That's all the movie's about, from what I've heard. I'm never going to watch it, but I've heard enough about it to get a good idea of what it's about. And if that's the case, and if you feel differently, feel free to comment so I can make a video about you and make you look stupid. But that's what the movie is for. It's to indoctrinate and train little girls to grow up to be feminists and make them think that men are weak and useless and they can do everything on their own. So now I'm going to tell you about this conversation I had with a feminist from China. So I met this random person on a random website, and they were from China, right? We had a conversation. We became friends or whatever. And they were feminists. And we were just talking about feminism in China, and they were explaining to me the upside to it, right? Because I was telling them about feminism here, and I was like, in our country, it's not exactly as noble as you're making it sound. But for her, in her country, it was a great thing. And this girl was 22 years old. She's young, doesn't know too much about the world, but she grew up thinking that this ideology could help her and women in China to be free and have more rights. And at first I was, vibing with her and listening to her and saying, okay, I see where you're coming from. It makes sense. But the more I talked to this person, the more I realized not only were they a hypocrite and a liar, and they didn't believe in their own words, but they didn't really understand the end result of what feminism leads to. And they didn't understand what it was doing to them. And they didn't understand how it's going to affect their life going forward. So I'm going to explain that. So this person was telling me, yeah, in our country, women are treated badly by men, right? Men treat women badly. They don't respect women as much. And now the women in China are fighting with the men, yada, yada, yada. And they want freedom, equal rights, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, that's cool. If that's what you're using it for, okay, that's all good and dandy. But the problem is, she would tell me things like, oh, she likes the fact that they're having these scientific experiments now where women can make their own children and they don't need men. And I said, all right, hold on. That's where we've had our first major clash. And I didn't talk to this person for too long, and you'll see why, because we were way on opposite ends of thinking. But at first I was trying to be understanding, but then when she said this, I was like, so what you're telling me is that you agree with and believe in the erasure of men, right? You believe that men shouldn't exist because women can create children on their own. And apparently there's scientific experiments being done that this can be done, right? Apparently women can have sperm on their own and do this, that, and the other, whatever. Whatever she was talking about, I don't even give a fuck. The point was, she was telling me that women don't need men to reproduce. So I said, so then why should men even exist? If you believe that this is the case, that it's okay for women to do this and women should be more empowered to do this, then at some point, don't you think that men will become obsolete? And that there will be no need to create men anymore because women can create whatever children they want. They might as well just keep creating women, right? So it's pretty much just going to lead to the end of men. She's like, no, I don't believe in that. And I'm like, yeah, you may not believe in that, but that's what your ideology leads to. That's what your belief leads to. If you believe that this is empowering to women and this is a good thing for women, it leads to not only an unnatural way of creating life, but you're erasing men, which is me, right? I'm a man, so you're taking me out of the picture. I'm not going to exist in your world. And then on top of that, it's unnatural. It's just creating, it's a science experiment. It's a science project. It's not the way that it was intended to be, whether you believe in God or not, whoever you believe created the universe and created humans. The intent was for men and women to have sex and reproduce that way. That's the natural way to do things. But in her mind, it's also natural to do it the scientific way and the experimental way. And I'm like, that's not really natural. That's just a concoction that some mad scientist came up with. Now, mind you, all these evil experiments come from aliens and demons, right? Because they're the ones that are trying to break the bond between men and women and make men and women hate each other. Because these demons and aliens, they're asexual. They don't care about men and women. So, and what asexual means is most of them don't care about having sex or having reproductive organs. They don't care about that. It doesn't mean anything to them. They don't have intimate connections with each other like humans do. So when you take love and intimacy out of it and you just start to create life in a lab, right? Then you can pretty much just create whatever you want. And it's no longer a human thing. What makes humans humans is the bonds and the relationships that humans have with each other. And procreation is one of the greatest, if not the greatest thing humans can do. But in her mind, it's acceptable for women to do this on their own without men. So obviously, I had a problem with that. And I said, if you support this, you're basically saying I shouldn't exist. But that wasn't the end of it. Then I asked her about her activism and what is she doing for women in China? Well, she's not doing anything. All she's doing is, from what she told me, is she's sitting in a group with one of her friends who brainwashed her into thinking these things. All she did was listen to what her friend said. Because in the end, I came to understand that everything she learned about feminism was from her friend. And she wasn't thinking for herself. She was just listening to what her friend told her. And they would have this little private group of girls where they would just chit chat about hating men. That's all their group was. And I said, how is you in a group talking with your friend about hating men doing anything for women? How does that promote women, and how does that make women empowered? How are you helping women? She couldn't give me an answer. She just got upset with me. And she said, well, this is what I'm always going to think, and this is how I'm always going to feel. I'm like, well, if that's what you want to do, that's all fine and dandy, but I don't agree with your way of thinking. So I don't, we're not going to really be good friends or be able to talk if this is the way you think. And she couldn't understand this. It was like such a mind fuck to her that I didn't want to agree with this cancerous mentality that she had. So all in all, she couldn't understand how feminism and the way and that's the thing. Her friend and her and the way they think and the way they were talking is the beginning of the end, right? Where it leads to down the path of a hard life for her and other feminists who end up having miserable lives because men hate them. They hate men, and guess what? Men are going to hate you back. So I was telling her, I was like, if you're spreading this in China, hating men, right? You're spreading this to other women in China just to hate men, hate Chinese men, right? How do you think that's going to look or work out for you and the men that control China? You think those men are going to support you? The men that you want to get rights from, you think they're going to give you your rights when you hate them? If anything, they're going to put you down more. And your feminism isn't going to work. No one's going to listen to your dumb ass. That's the truth. You're spreading this cancerous ideology in your country, and you're at the beginning stages of where it deteriorates from going from a noble cause where you're trying to help women and give them rights and make them equal to men, to just hating men and being evil and hateful. Hateful is really the only real word I can think of. But that's the end result of feminism. It's just hate. It's men hating. That's all it leads to. And then those women are miserable because no men want them. Men don't want that shit. But you know what's ironic about feminism or feminists? They love, from my understanding, masculine men. I'm certain of it. Let me put it to you this way. I'm certain that that's the case. Feminist women love masculine men. The very thing that they hate is the very thing that they love. Isn't that an oxymoron? It's just funny, but that's why I was telling her, I was like, your ideology is meaningless and pointless. You can fight for women's rights without being a feminist. You don't have to be a feminist to support women. But in her little tiny brain, she can only fathom that being a feminist is the only way to go. So I said, okay, look, we're obviously never going to agree on this, and we're always going to have disagreements, and we're not going to see eye to eye, so we shouldn't talk anymore. And that's it. That's the end of it. Because when somebody thinks that way, there's no fixing that. The only way that they can fix themselves is to go through life and suffer and see all the shit that their mentality causes. And then when they go through all the shit they go through, they'll learn the hard way. That's the only way she can be fixed. It's through her own trials and tribulations. Me talking to her ain't doing shit. All it was happening, we were having back and forth and arguments. She's too young and ignorant to understand anything. She has no experience in the world, and all her ideas came from her friend. She didn't even think of this herself. She didn't come up with this herself. She was just listening to somebody else. And I'm like, you're done. You're gonna have a hard life if that's the way you think. But you know what? Whatever. She didn't really believe in the things that she spoke, because she was very reliant on men to do things for her, from the things she told me. So if you're a feminist, from my understanding, you want to empower women to be independent and do things on their own, but she wasn't practicing what she preached. So she's sitting here talking about women's rights, this, that, and the other, and being independent, yet at the same time she was using men to get things in her life, to do things for her, because she's going to do things on her own. Again, this is what feminism ultimately leads to. Weak women that nobody wants. It's a cancerous ideology mentality. It's a religion. That's what it's turned into. It's a cult, really, but religion, cult, whatever. It's like saying tomato, tomato, right? It's the same shit. But long story short, she doesn't understand her own cult mentality, her own religion. Yet she wants to preach it to others, and she wants others to listen to her and what she has to say. And I'm like, you don't even know what you're talking about. So there's nothing to talk about here. I know way more than you. I've dealt with this. I know where feminism originated. I know how it originated. I know what it's being used for. I know what the end result is and what it leads to. So here in the United States, they're using it to, like I said in the beginning of the video, destroy men and make men weak, and while promoting women and making women the new men, right? And in China, they're using it to have women and men hate each other and oppose each other. That's all that it's being used for. So it's just, you know, beginning over there. It's already been full-blown done over here. But over there, it's just starting, right? And she doesn't know what she's getting into, but she'll learn the hard way. And it is what it is. And then one day she'll think about what I told her, and she's going to come back and be like, yeah, you were right, dude. I'm like, well, guess you learned the hard way. It is what it is. But if you like, comment, subscribe, share where you can. Hit the notification bell. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.